Hi, my name is Cel, and I'm your host for the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast, where we share stories of amazing women who live in our communities. My hope is that you will feel encouraged and inspired after listening to each episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast. I'm your host, Cel, and today my guest is Amy Peacock. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am too. And we recently just met because we are co-leads along with Woodson Bradley, who is our other co-lead for Healthy Charlotte Coalition, which is underneath the American Heart Association. And it's going to be so much fun. Like, we've already started doing some things together, but I'm just so excited to have met you. And of course, I had to have you on the podcast because there's so much about you that I wanted to get to know, but also to share. So before we jump into like all the fun stuff, I really want you just to share a little bit about who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, let me say I'm so excited to be working with you on this active living committee. And we're going to have fun times for everybody. Let's see. Well, I live in Charlotte right now. I've been here since 2003. I'm from right outside of Washington, D.C. I actually grew up right next to the CIA in McLean, Virginia, which was always interesting. And I ended up going to University of Georgia, where I met my husband, who was a Charlotte native. And we ended up getting married. And then in 2003, we moved back to Charlotte. So I have two children. We have two children. We have a son who's 19. He's actually on his way home today and from school for spring break, college. And then our daughter is a senior in high school. So should I go on?
Yeah, like anything that you want to say, like, I mean, anything about your, what are your hobbies or your interests or other things about you, anything interesting. And which living next to the CIA definitely was interesting, like growing up. That had to be crazy. I'm sure you've got stories.
Yeah, I mean, there was a farm right around the CIA called Claude Moore Colonial Farm. And one day I was looking out back and we had all these wild pigs in our backyard that escaped. And then one day I woke up getting ready for school and I heard all these helicopters around, and Amy Carter was doing some kind of protest at the CIA. And then there was another thing where there was a terrorist that came. So it was pretty wild. But that's just Washington, all of that kind of stuff goes on. But anyway, so I very happy to be I'm in my early 50s now, and I've been through a lot. When I got out of college, I did a couple things. I thought I wanted to be in the advertising world, when I really it took me a few steps to figure out what I really wanted to do, but I landed an internet startup business, which back in the day when the internet was starting up, it was like I was doing database personalized marketing, which was so new back then, but everybody does that now. And what was so neat about it is everyone wanted to work together. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to call on the phone. We didn't really have Zoom back then, but it was, oh, we're going to get on a plane and we're going to go seal a deal, and we're going to, bring the lawyers and the tech guys, and everybody's going to work together so we can integrate to move, the internet forward and online businesses forward, bricks and mortar who had gone online. So that was really fun. But during that time, my dad had died while I was in college, which I was sophomore year. He ended up getting cancer, and he died within 16 months. It was pretty tragic for me and my family. But then fast forward 8 years later, my mom got ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, which is, do you know what ALS is?
I know a little bit about it just because I've heard it mentioned. I haven't personally experienced any, have anybody in my life that has it, but I am familiar with it. But I'd love for you to kind of explain a little bit more, because people do hear that term.
Yeah, so
I tossed out a lot.
I was working for this business called Incentives, and working really hard. And mom was, a widow. So she was, when my dad died, she was 51. And she had kind of I mean, she was biking, she was doing her real estate, she was in a great position, but all of a sudden she started slowing down and couldn't keep up with their bikers, and um, fell a couple times. And long story short, she ended up getting ALS, which is a disease which attacks your motor neurons. So when your brain sends a signal for the muscle to do something, like, we're fitness people, to lift a weight or pick up anything, pick up even a cup of coffee, the motor neurons in ALS patients die. So the brain is firing off these signals, but the muscles aren't getting the action or the information to move. So you become atrophy, and you get paralyzed, and everything becomes paralyzed. You can't, in the end, you can't even talk or use your hands. And in mom's case, and most patients towards the end of their diagnosis, they can only communicate with their eyes. So that's how we had to communicate with mom, which was crazy. But it gave me a really a heart that I would not have had I not experienced ALS for people who are disabled. The little things like having doors wide enough to in a business for a wheelchair to get through. I mean, I was like on my knees going, thank you. Or a bathroom that you can get a wheelchair in that is accessible, or just someone, the kindness of strangers, the littlest things that people could do to make our lives easier, really just put me in awe. So long story short, I had to leave my job because ultimately I couldn't do both well. And mom, your parents are, your family is more important, in my view. So anyway, I ended up moving to Charlotte. Mom was still had her ALS, and she was in Virginia, and we had one little boy, a baby, and then I was pregnant again, and my mom actually died during this time. When I had our daughter, I flew up to see her in Washington when our daughter was 2 weeks old, and to be with mom, and so mom could meet our little Avery, which was great. Put her on her chest, and anyway, so after losing both parents, I just felt like, I'm not sure I want to go back to the corporate world as much as I love that kind of chasing and slaying the dragon and all that. And I really was passionate about, obviously, after losing my parents so young, health and longevity, health, fitness, and longevity. So I decided to, stay home with the kids and have a more flexible job and, get into the fitness business. And so that's where I've been ever since then. So.
Well, and going back to that, because this really, opens up for even more questions about where you are in fitness. But were you active prior to that? Were you active growing up, or this really, because it sounds like the really turning point for you and to go into fitness was because of what you experienced with your family and your parents?
Well, I think I was always growing up, I was always riding my bike. I was playing soccer. I played soccer at Georgia. It was a club team. We were great. And so right after I left, they went pro. And but I loved working out, going to the gym with friends and riding the bike. I never did strength training back then because I didn't even know to do it. But so I've always been active. And then when I came home from college, I started walking, and I'm like, kind of to deal with the kind of therapy, thinking about my dad, and I'm like, this takes too long. So I started running. I haven't stopped. But then I started running 5Ks, and then I did a marathon, and then a couple half marathons. And then, so I've always been active. My parents were active. I think, I was talking about this the other day with my husband and some other people, that if your parents are active, I think you're more likely to be active or have an interest in athletics. So yeah, I've always had a passion for fitness. And I began strength training really in around 2000, when there was this big Body for Life challenge. And that's when I started to use weights for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I just decided, what can I do? I stay home with these little kids, babies, and fulfill something that I'm passionate about. So that's how I decided to, get certified and all that. to teach fitness.
Well, all I know is that just hearing your experience and what you've been through with losing both parents and being a mom and maintaining, just to be able to maintain mental health and physical health. I know that there were challenges that came with that experience, and you said you would walk and then you started to run. Do you really feel like that's what's really helped you through the grieving process and really to find inner strength? Because that had to have been really difficult.
Absolutely. I think what happened, and I feel like I could write a book on this, but who wants to read a book about grief or healing from grief, right? But I made a mental decision when my dad died. I had to get out of college. I had to move on with my life. So I mentally decided I'm going to put this in a little box, the grief, and put it up in my closet and not deal with it because I didn't have time to deal with it. So basically, I ran away from that, dealing with grief. You have to deal with grief. So I ran away with it or from it. And then the grief monster. And then mom got ALS. So I had not grieved over losing my dad, which was incredibly painful. And then mom got ALS. And after she died, it was like double. And then I was like, I've got to do something. And I just kind of shut down. So here I had this, our kids are 16 months apart. I had them in, I just shut down. I was like, I need to see someone. And so my doctor referred me to, my doctor thought I was too much of a blur. I was too running away from everything. And so she referred me to this nurse who was specialized in grief therapy. And I sat down with her, real nervous. I'm like, okay, how can I get through these stages of grief fast?
What's the list? What's the checklist? So you just check it off as we go.
Things to do. I got to move on. And she basically said, who do you have? She said 3 things that, do you have a mentor or someone you can talk to? And I'm like, no, I'm new to Charlotte. That's what I'm talking to you. And then I didn't really talk to anybody about this. And so I said, not really. And she said, well, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I love to run. And she said, well, have you been running? And I said, no, because I have these little kids. At the time, I didn't have a double stroller. And she said, you have a community you can rely on. And I said, kind of. I mean, again, I'm new to Charlotte. I have some friends, but it's just, So the one thing I did do was get back to running. And my friend, Molly Barker, who started Girls on the Run, had this old double stroller, literally, that she left on my front porch. And oh my God, that saved me. I mean, I would put the kids in the double stroller and just run all the time. And that was pretty life-changing. But it was really what the biggest thing she told me that I've told other people is that there's no timetable on grief. You can't check it off, but you do have to deal with it somehow. And so I'm not I don't want this to be all about grief, but it's how you get through it. You can't run away from it. You've got to, if you imagine it, you got to fight back. I think versus run away.
Yeah. I think this is important conversation. I think this is things that aren't talked about that are just people assume, or, I think this podcast is going to be really important because to me, this leads us into the next part of the conversation, which is you founded FIA, which is Females in Action. This is a community that you built. So to me, that is what's come out of all of the grief and all of the things that you experienced. Because just when you said the 3 things that she listed, and it's like the 3rd thing on your list was community. So tell us a little bit about Females, or is it Females in Action? Did I say that right?
Yeah, Females in Action. FIA. Okay. Well, to back up, so remember I told you I did this Body for Life challenge.
Yeah.
Bill Phillips, you know him. You know of him. I
yes.
think he started all these fitness competitions and bodybuilding, and anyway, he started something called the transformation camp right around, I don't know, 10 years ago or more than 10, but well, Fia's 10, so it would be 12 or 13 years ago. And so I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go out and learn about this transformation, because I could do it as a trainer. I could create transformation groups here. And so I go out there and I realized it was less about the workout. So every day we would do a workout, strength and cardio, and then we'd circle up and sit in chairs and talk. And everybody had to go around and share what was on their mind. And from corporate executives to this young guy, teen, to me, it's just everybody. I realized everybody has got something there that hurts about them. And unless they can address that hurt, it's really hard to change, whether it's, to get fit or happy or have more joy. If they're still struggling every day with that stuff, and they're struggling alone, they're never going to get better. So I realized there the power of community. And then I read the book, the Daniel Plan. It's all and about that's a book about that you can do over Lent and about getting fit. But anyway, Rick Warren talked about what he realized the success, the key to the people actually losing the weight and taking on the challenge and being healthier was community. That was the game changer. So that was kind of filling up in my mind. And then, F3 started in Charlotte in 2011. And my husband had been working out with this other group, and he joined the guys who had started F3. And man, he would come home from the workouts so happy. I was like, he's already kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, but man, he was like, honey, what do you need me to do? I'll take the kids out in the minivan. I'll go shopping. I'll do anything. and then they started having more days they worked out together, and then they would do trips together, and it just got crazy. And I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And I trained women mostly. I would do group fitness with men and women, but the women that I trained, I knew they needed something like, again, community. We all can use community. The guys had great community, and I thought, well, there must be a need for that for women too. So that's when I went ahead and, I've been talking about it with my husband, and I'm like, I got to talk to Dred and OBT, Dave and Tim, who founded F3, about if they want to start a women's group. And so I met with them over coffee, and they definitely had no interest in starting a women's group. Even though they have daughters, they thought women didn't need it. So they basically said, if you want to give it a try, you can, it's fine. Well, you can do it. So I took that as a blessing and went forward with that. So we started in Charlotte with just, we basically sent out a letter to my friends, some of the people I trained, and, know that we would meet at 5:15 in the morning and do a workout outside. And that was hard to convince people to do. But we decided to do it early because the guys, we had to get back before the guys. It's a long story, but so we meet at 5:15, and the first day it was so cool because it was so dark and misty, and there was no traffic, and you were like the only people out there, and it's the coolest feeling. And two other women met with me. My husband was with us for this first workout because he wanted us to try to do an F3 style and cadence, flag, and all that. Even though I was a trainer, I let. But yeah, and so there was another girl, Jazz Dillard, who joined me, firecracker, and then another girl, and then slowly we began to grow. More and more girls would come to the workouts, and then the workout locations grew, and then we'd offer multiple workouts a day or a morning, and then now it's grown. And then we had people from Fort Mill come up, they would come up, drive up. They probably got up at 4 to drive to
Wow.
Charlotte. And then Mountain Island Lake. And then we just started growing and growing and growing. And now we're in over 23 states, and we just launched in the UK.
That's amazing.
And we're
That's
celebrating our
amazing.
10 year. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's huge.
Well, it's been a team effort. I mean, it's definitely, as you know about the stuff, you can't do it alone. The cool thing about it is how it's because we're peer led. I don't lead the workouts. Trainers don't. You might be a trainer leading a workout, but it's peer led. So you help women learn to lead who may be uncomfortable leading. Saying time to do jumping jacks or push-ups or burpees. And leading. So that's been really cool.
That's awesome. Is there a story of maybe somebody that's been in part of the community, or somebody that has shared something with you of what that community has done for them that has inspired you to keep going?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think as any FIA will tell you that if you get up, you never regret getting up and working out with FIA, because in 45 minutes, you get your fitness, your little fellowship, and friendship, which is all so important in for our health. And the stories that the women have, I know I didn't personally deal with this, but there are some women that had serious postpartum after they had children and really struggled with that. And their doctors said, you need to find a community. Do you have any friends you can talk or be with? And FIA has changed their lives. I think the younger girls, they're all working, and they've particularly if you're new to Charlotte, this is a network of women of all ages that you all of a sudden know and can meet out for beers, or some girls do Bible study, book clubs, they train for races, but today I worked out with women from their 30s all the way to their 60s. Some days it's the 20s, and I'm usually the oldest, but
Well, I
but
think it's amazing. I think the fact that, I think that's the thing people miss when it comes to community, that they have they don't realize maybe the power of the network they're building just by going and being part of that. Because you do, I know for me, any community effort, when it comes to what we're doing with Healthy Charlotte, or I've worked with other nonprofit organizations, or been involved in the community somehow, that's become such a network, because you cross paths with people that you would never have crossed paths with otherwise, and it opens up so many more
that's so
opportunities.
true. It's the fact that people are working out together that wouldn't know each other or wouldn't even be in the same zip code, we're now working out together. So it's, it doesn't matter of your background, your color, your income, your fitness level, all of these people come together, and we get to know each other, which is really cool. And we do help each other. Like if one FIA, for example, wants to change careers, and so we're all thinking about our network and how we can help her find a job, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's not just about working out. And I think that's a big thing. And I think as people, as humans, we were meant to have community. We're meant to, be in places and surrounded by others that can help, lift each other up. And especially when there's hard places, you need people to lean into.
Mhm.
And one person cannot meet all of your needs. A lot of times people will pull back and be like, well, I have my person and that's all I need. That's not true, because they can't supply everything that you need. You need a group of people. There's reason in that, and there's purpose in it. And it's a beautiful thing when you connect and collaborate, and that's what drives me. So that's where I think it was so fun to meet you, first of all, because I have been researching I've been researching FIA for a long time, I told you, about a year and a half, and then come to find out I was going to end up working with you, and again, in a community atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? I'm going to get to work with her. I'm so excited. So that's why we had to I really wanted you to share about that. And along those lines, do you have so if somebody's looking to start their own community wherever they are, regardless of what it is, do you
Right.
have 2 or 3 tips you would offer somebody that might be thinking about starting something similar?
Right. Well, I think, yeah, I always say join a community, and if you can't find one, start one. So if you have an interest in I don't know, a pickleball or strength training, or seniors or whatever, dining or not dining, but having, supper clubs. You just need to start small, start with 1 or 2 people, and then, grow from there. But the key of everything is just starting. So if you think for me, the key for me was meeting with Dread and OBT, and putting that line in the sand and saying, this needs to happen. And but if I had always just thought about it and not done anything, or I want to join this community, or I want to start something and never do it, that's what holds people back. You've got to just do it and start with one person, call one person. And if you don't have a person to call, reach out to your church. If you know, if or you can reach out to Charlotte social services. I mean, there all sorts of people are here to help. But I think you can share what you're interested, and if you have a network on social media, you can also put out a post saying, hey, I'm thinking of starting this, who wants to join me? Private message me, you know but just starting. Yeah.
Well, and I think you've carried that even a step further because here you've done all of this in the community. I know you've done a lot of other things, and I want to save some of that for another podcast. But what I want to talk about right now is you have taken this step out and written a book. That's a big deal. So I want to talk about that. What inspired your book? What is it about? And and what it took for you to actually write it. Talk about starting something. That's a big undertaking to start and to finish.
Right. Well, I am an activator. So had my strengths done. That's something I'd love to do is start things up. And this book, the book I wrote actually with my co-author, Don Brown, is called Old Reed General. And it is about my grandfather who wrote something in the Marine Corps called My Rifle, the Creed of the United States Marine, also known as the Rifleman's Creed, that Marines have recited, and I learned the Army too, for many years. I mean, since 1942. And it's been in movies and in, videos and that sort of thing. So he also led the Marines in the Pacific during World War II, which, the Marines would go to the islands where the Japanese were, and meet the Japanese in these embedded islands. But he died in 1945, and his story has never been told. So he's got this fascinating story. He lost his first family to scarlet fever in China while he was stationed in China. And he remarried and had my grandmother Sleepy, and had my father in 1939. But long story short, when both our parents died, we were sitting around the kitchen table with my sisters. I have 2 older sisters, 4 and 5 years older than me. And we're like, all of a sudden, we're the adults in the room, and we're fairly young because, my parents died young. And we're like, what are we going to do with all this stuff? Because we have actually in my house, or I have most of the stuff now because I was writing the book, but trunk loads of photos and telegrams from, just for an example, from Eleanor Roosevelt and General MacArthur, and you name it. We have all this stuff with pictures and albums and all that have been carried around since my grandfather died in 1945 of a heart attack in Washington, D.C. So we all agreed that we thought it would be like an amazing movie or Netflix. Well, we didn't have Netflix back then, but it would be something really important because it was so fascinating and exotic. And he had been in Haiti and China twice, Peking and Shanghai, and then in the Pacific, and during World War II. And anyway, we had to go back to our lives, and we decided it would be cool to do something with this, but we never did it. And it wasn't until 2016 when another author, this lawyer in Charlotte, Don Brown, reached out to me on Facebook and sent me a picture of my grandfather and my grandmother and these people in black tie that was taken in Shanghai, China in 1937. And he's like, "Is this your grandfather?" It's like, because he was researching a story about a World War II aviator, Captain Jerry Yellen. And anyway, he's like, "Oh my God, you need to write a story about him. He's never had a story written about him. This guy did all these things." And so I met Don for lunch, and I'm like, "Don, you're an author, you're former Navy JAG officer, practicing lawyer. Why don't you write the story?" And he's like, "No, no, no, no. You need to write it. He's your grandfather." And so I started basically realizing how important it is to get our people's story down. Not everybody is a Marine Corps Major General that, led the Marines in the Pacific, but every story contributes to the database of history. So now if I had not written the story, his story and what he witnessed and experienced would not be there would be a little blip in that database. So what I did is I got his service record digitized from the National Archives. So he has a 700-page file, got that taken care of, got his record from the Marine Corps. And then I read a ton of other oral histories or listened to them of men that served with him in the military. I got my sisters involved. My sister Kimberly, she had some extra time and she did some extra research at the archives and put everything up on Dropbox so I could easily access it when I'm writing. So I would literally, I took this, like, I went all in. I mean, it was awful. Like, and writers, if you do this, you end up staying in your house a lot and becoming kind of an introvert because you want to get the story down. And for me, I had no writer's block because there was so much content. And I just, and I became so motivated every time I wanted to quit. I was thinking about these Marines who would land on these islands with the Japanese firing at them. I'm like, I can't quit. I got to keep going. So, I mean, I would work all day and the kids would be like, "Mom, are you going to make dinner?" Anyway, so I had a developmental editor. I worked over it for 6 years. It was a huge story. And I had a developmental editor who's a female Marine, former Marine officer. And she helped me with it. She recommended I might want to partner with someone who's military just because I'm writing the story as a civilian. And then I sent it to the Naval Institute Press, and they also said, "You probably should partner with someone that's military. The story needs to be told, definitely." But that military piece was a little bit missing. So I went back to Don 6 years later and said, "Hey, Don, do you want to be my co-author on this? It's already written, but let's see where we need more military." And it was an awesome thing because he is Navy. So he has been on ships. He knows what it's like. And the Navy brought the Marines to the Pacific. They brought the Army to the Pacific. So the Navy's really important. And I've been so fascinated by the boots on the ground. Really thought about the guys that brought them there. So Don did an excellent job pulling in the Navy and doing a little more. So what we decided to do is put a little more story in there and do more of a narrative, creative nonfiction. So based on the letters we have between the generals or from MacArthur or from Eleanor Roosevelt, we can, in our grandfather's diary, we can develop dialogue that we know they probably said because and how they said it and how they communicated. And so that's what the story is about.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
That's so fascinating.
It was published in, it came out actually just yesterday. Today's the 3rd. Just yesterday, a year ago, we had our first book signing at Parker Books in Charlotte. And then we went on a huge book tour last year. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So where can we get the book because I'm really fascinated by this. And is it Audible or is it just written?
It is not, it's getting to be Audible. Right now, it's just, it's everywhere online and in your local bookstores. I think Parker Books here in Charlotte and Barnes and Noble. But it's, available on Amazon, all those places.
And what's the name of the book again?
Called Old Breed General. And I've got a website with a ton of stuff on it, my personal website, or author website. I started a Facebook page. If you're ever start a book, this was a great idea because this was such important history. I wanted to say, I'm writing this book, and would you join me? I may need your help identifying some of these, older Marines and some of the history. And so I built this Facebook group. It's not huge, but it's very supportive, and I just love the people I've met and the people I've connected through that group. So that was pretty cool. But it's been a great process. I'm so happy I had the time to do it.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you really just, took it on, you dove in. And I think it sounds like just the more that you were able to dive into the stories, like you probably learned a lot about your dad through that as well. Like from finding out about his dad. Like, I just think that's so fascinating.
Well, so my dad's father died when he was 5 years old. My dad was 5. And then his mom died. Sleepy died when my dad was 16. So my dad had a rough time, but he was a great guy. He went to the Naval Academy, flew for the Marine Corps, did 2 tours in Vietnam. He never talked about his parents. But my God, if I would have been able to give him this book, or what was so fascinating is we found audio from 1942 and 1943 of our grandfather. And we found all these videos of him in the Pacific and in China that our dad never saw. And he probably never, except when he was little, he heard his dad's voice. But as an adult, if he could hear his father's voice, that would have been so cool. So we have that. The general has a YouTube channel.
That's so awesome.
Where I have all that stuff. Yeah. So.
Well, I think this says so much about you. Like, I've gotten to know you a little bit already because we've had some fun meetups and have had a lot of conversation already. But just to, I knew that you starting FIA was a big thing, because anybody that launches out and actually starts something and it grows in the way it has, and then now you've written a book, you've authored a book, that says a lot. And the follow through, like the push through, like you said so much in that, where it's like you get to that hard place, but you remember what other people went through, and that's what forced you to keep going. It says a lot about your character and a lot about the person that you are. So I just appreciate you just sharing all of this, because there's like you're talking about content. There's like so much just in this one podcast, and we've just this is just the surface. We haven't dove into the depth of it, but I think there'll be more to come. But before there's always, I have these last questions I always ask. So I'm going to kind of re-gear us a little bit, or switch gears a little bit, and go to, what is a quote, a song, is there something that personally inspires and motivates you daily that you lean into right now?
But there's a quote. So my dad would always give me all these quotes. And so everybody knows the man in the arena now because of Brene Brown. It's not the critic counts, all that. And then he gave me another quote, and on persistence. So, I guess I needed all this in my teens, but he could leave these little quotes for me on my desk. But this one I love, in addition to the man in the marina. I just love that. My dad had given me that. This one, you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay, this one is by Calvin Coolidge. You've probably heard it before, but it says, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." So, and then this one by Michael Jordan.
I love it.
Good. Some people want it to happen. Some people wish it would happen. Others make it happen. And then this one by Marcus Aurelius. When you rise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. So
I love all of those. And every single one. I mean, like just listening to that, and anybody that's listening, that should just inspire you going into today. Like whatever you've got ahead of you, or if you're at the end of your day, it should help get you prepared going into the next day. I'm the same way. I have to lean into quotes and look at, the great things that people have done in life. Nobody did it without being faced with challenge, and nobody did it without feeling like they wanted to quit at some point. And it's just being able to, you know, um, pull it together and, have those moments. I even had a moment this morning where I was super frustrated and I just was feeling super discouraged. And I even had I cried. I mean, I just be straight up, and I pulled out my coloring book because that's how I de-stress. And so I'm coloring, and I'm just like, just remember, this is just a moment. Like you'll get past it. Like take it, breathe through it, and then basically suck it back up. Let's go. Like there's no time to just wallow in it. We have it's just, you said earlier, it's a decision. We have a decision every day. It's a decision.
Mhm.
And this has been tremendous conversation. And I know that anybody that's listening to that, or that's going to be listening to it, is going to be encouraged and inspired. And with that said, before I let you go, is there anything else on your heart that you feel like you want to share at this time?
Um, no, I think, and I was talking to someone or communicating this to someone the other day who is struggling. And I think right now, communication, connection, and kindness are so important for everybody. And I think I would just, encourage us to communicate better, connect, and show a lot of kindness. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you were on, and I can't wait to drop this episode. Where can somebody contact you or connect with you on social media?
On Instagram, I'm just Amy Peacock, at Amy Peacock QC. I'm pretty much everywhere. LinkedIn, Rupertus Peacock. I've got a website, a virtual athlete, and Amy Rupertus Peacock, my author site.
Okay. And I'll put all these links for you all to so they can click on it and go visit her sites, get the book that's out there, be part of FIA, maybe start FIA in your area. If it's not in your area, I'm sure there's opportunity for that.
Yeah. So the FIA website is FIA Nation, FIA Nation.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love all of that. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. If you like the podcast, please like and share this with other women in your life. You can find out more about SweatNet on sweatnet.com, or follow them on Instagram at SweatNet and SweatNet Charlotte. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Cel Smart. Stay tuned for the next episode of the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast.